What's up, guys? Hope you guys have all been well and staying safe. Welcome back to another video. I hope you guys have enjoyed your Christmas time with your family. We're going to be looking into watch bracelets today, sort of all the more popular types you're going to see, some of the more less common ones you're going to see, and kind of everything in between, just to sort of give you a good foundation when it comes to watch bracelets so you can recognize them, pick them out, and maybe find one that suits your specific style.
Impressive.
So without further ado, the first one's going to be the Oyster bracelet. This is going to be characterized by a 3-link bracelet with the center link being wider than the outer ones. It offers probably one of the best blends of sportiness and dressiness and just all around style, class, and comfort. More often than not, you're going to find that these bracelets tend to taper just to sort of up the dressiness factor. So when it tapers down like that, I just find it sort of adds a little bit nicer proportions to your watch. All right, so another classic from Rolex. This is the Jubilee. This is a 5-piece semicircular link bracelet, very classy, very dressy, kind of looks like just a bunch of little pieces stuck together, brought out by Rolex in about the 40s, and ever since it's pretty much everybody's had their own take on this. And yes, the Jubilee was designed just for the Datejust itself. It's funny because when you think of Jubilee, Rolex comes to mind, but then second on that list is actually going to be Seiko on their obviously famous SKX. I have a couple of videos about it right here. $200 watch with their own sort of very cheap, flimsy Jubilee bracelet. I had one. Honestly, I love the fact they were so flimsy and so kind of cheap feeling. It actually was very light also on the wrists, which is good because the watch itself was kind of heavy. A timeless classic, very dressy, very formal, very, very sexy. Number 3, this is the Presidential, and I know this is from Rolex again, but I promise this is going to be the last one, at least for a little bit. Rolex has dipped their toes in bracelets. They've sort of done a lot when it comes to the styles and the types of bracelets that you see today, and the types of watches as well, which obviously makes a lot of sense. They're an iconic company, but anyway, so believe it or not, the Presidential, I believe, has only ever been made in precious metals, whether that's 18 karat gold, platinum. I think today you can get it as well. Somebody fact check me on this. I'm 99% sure they've specifically decided to only keep it as a precious metal bracelet. You tend not to see a Presidential on too many sort of cheaper watches. For whatever reason, they don't tend to imitate this one too much. Typically, if you're going to find a cheaper brand, if they want to dress up their watch with sort of a Rolex inspired style, you're probably more often than not going to find either a Jubilee or an Oyster bracelet. That's typically what you're going to be finding. Presidential, I don't tend to find too much on sort of more budget watches. All right, finally, we're moving away from Rolex. This is going to be the Engineer. Now, this one's going to be a little bit odd looking. It's a very sort of chain link looking watch. Some versions have it made as sort of a hexagon chain links. Supposedly Seiko is credited with having invented this, but IWC also has been given credit for some of the earlier versions of this sort of style of bracelet. I guess the idea was this is supposed to be more of like a scientific sort of, scientific research, sort of professional type watch versus something classier, just sort of the guys in the lab coats, which I guess makes sense because it's not too flashy. It's not like it's not overly feminine. It's not very pretty like a Jubilee or a Presidential would be. This is just sort of like square and to the point. Not really my thing, but hey, if it's your thing, it's your thing. All right, number 5, this is going to be the Milanese or Milanese, or I don't know how you pronounce this, Milanese. Everybody says it differently. Milanese, I think, is how you pronounce it. But anyways, this is going to be a very thin sort of mesh style watch, not to be confused with a shark mesh, which we're going to get into next. Typically, these tend to be very, very thin, very actually cheap to manufacture as well, which is why you find them on a lot of dress watches like Daniel Wellingtons, things of that nature. They tend to look good on pretty much everything, especially on sort of minimalist style watches, which is why you find them on the Daniel Wellingtons, the MVMTs, things like that. Anything with a minimalist basic design, very simple, very flat, very basic. Proportions are awesome. And again, cheap to make as well. Looks great pretty much on anything. It's not really my thing. I find that they tend to be almost always way too thin. I don't like bracelets that are too thick. I don't like bracelets that are too thin. What can I say? I'm a bracelet princess. Like, I don't know. All right, number 6, this is going to be the shark mesh, like I mentioned. Very similar to a Milanese, except this is sort of the more masculine, almost like the Milanese bracelet, except it's on steroids.
You're already pumped up. I can't believe that.
So instead of being a nice flat, very refined mesh, it's literally like giant chain links. And then what's cool about these two is that they don't even have usually end links. It's usually just the spring bar that you have to put through the actual hole of the links, like the chain itself. Now, the main downside to these is you can't just adjust the bracelet on the fly. You actually have to get a rotary tool or a wire cutter or something and literally cut almost said a bad word, and literally cut the actual links in the chain, and then from there attach it to your spring bar. So a bit more of a hassle. They're super badass looking. If you put it on something like a diver, say like an SKX on a shark mesh, looks super badass, man. Okay, so we're gonna get into some much less common styles. This is called the beads of rice for number 7. Named that way because, well, it looks like beads of rice. You're gonna find these typically on vintage watches for whatever reason. I think it's to do with the fact that they just paired so well to sort of the whole vintage, very delicate, thin, smaller aesthetic of watch that they were rocking back then. So if you're shopping around for something vintage, keep your eyes peeled. You're bound to find something like a beads of rice. I think it does look, it can look pretty good, especially on women's watches as well. Number 8 is gonna be a funky one. This is called the Bonklip. Now, sometimes they call this the ladder style. It's basically just a bunch of lateral bars attached together, and then they go up kind of like a ladder. They were sort of reminiscent of the Rolex bubbleback era and sort of watches of that time period, but I find they give a very awesome, like sort of retro 1970s funky look going on. Like if you find a Speedmaster with this on, I think it pairs well with sort of the era. For some reason, it almost reminds me of like a video game, like an old arcade game. Now, number 9 is going to be any bracelet with a gapped style. There's many versions of gapped style bracelets. Typically, you're going to find either they're going to be lateral gaps or they're going to be circular gaps. So it's either going to be kind of like an Oyster style bracelet just with a bunch of gaps in it, or you're going to find circular holes where it's pretty much identical to one of the leather racing rally straps that race car drivers used to wear, except on a metal bracelet. Now I'm going to say I absolutely hate both of these. I think the gap design is very off-putting, very unsettling. It sort of like triggers my trypophobia, which is like a fear of holes. I understand if you're looking from a functionality perspective, like, you know, the rally bracelets, it's nice because you get the wrist cooling and all that to go with it. But me personally, it's just not my thing, and I don't find that the added functionality would really attract me to the bracelet anymore. Now, the last one to finish off the video is going to be not any specific style of bracelet, but we're going to just talk about a couple of honorable mentions that I think you should know. These are bracelets that are going to be specific to certain watches. So for example, certain ones you should know, the Tang Tread bracelet, which is on the Omega Seamaster, which by the way, if you haven't checked out my review of the Omega Seamaster 300 Professional, link is right there. This bracelet tends to have like a huge sort of love it or hate it type crowd going on. If you actually jump to the video that I linked below, if you go to the comments, you'll see people are fighting about the bracelet. And it's pretty common on like Omega Seamaster videos. People just argue about the bracelet. I don't know why. I like the bracelet. I don't know why there's so much hate for it, but you either love the bracelet or you hate it. Like I said, it's very entertaining to watch, honestly, watch guys fight over bracelets. Next one you should know is the Pearl Master bracelet. Not too common in budget watches. No one tends to really remake this style. Even on women's watches, I don't find that they use this sort of style of bracelet, but it is something you should know. It is a good looking bracelet in my opinion, especially for a women's watch. It's very feminine, very elegant. And the last one is Breitling's H bracelet. You're gonna find is very iconic. It's the sort of the slashed line bracelet, kind of looks like, you know, either an H or just a bunch of slashes. Super cool in my opinion, super unique. No one's really done this style of bracelet well at all, except for Breitling. Very, very popular on the Navi timers and a bunch of other sort of their dive watch styles as well. Me personally, man, I think it's probably one of my favorite bracelets on this entire list, aside from the Oyster maybe, just because the Oyster is so sort of versatile, but super good looking bracelet, very heavy duty, very masculine, super cool looking. All right, that was the video, guys. If you learned a thing or two, please let me know down in the comments below. Fact check me if you happen to know the answers for what I asked. Otherwise, I wish you all a very happy new year. Have yourselves a wonderful 2022. Get yourself off to a very good start. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below. It helps me out a ton. And until next time, stay safe and happy new year.